At the end of the book, Mises asks himself a question my students have been asking me for many years. Professor, after all of the classes, the 75 you have taught, and after having done the readings, it is obvious to me what economic science teaches us. I am convinced. However, I do not understand why, if it is so obvious, the same errors are still being committed in the outside world. Why does this happen? My answer is always the same. Dear students, do not be naive and do not fall into the wishful thinking of the old liberals, who thought that because the teachings are quite clear and have been confirmed by economic science, people would naturally act sensibly. Mises tells us that we must begin by taking into account the uniqueness of economics as a science. Economic events can be interpreted in a wide variety of ways, and their correct interpretation depends on our first having developed a valid economic theory. This requires an intellectual effort. You may have a very clear understanding of the teachings, but that is partly because you have spent a year with me, and you have devoted hours to study. Who in the outside world devotes hours to study? In a political debate, extremely important matters which are central to our lives are dealt with in 30 seconds. That is not enough time to transmit even basic information. Furthermore, public opinion is manipulated. It is driven by intuition and political manipulations. Invalid theories and mistaken demagogic interpretations are constantly used to rally voters. And today, when we analyze the contributions of the public choice school, which earned Buchanan the Nobel Prize in Economics, we saw why this is true. Also, there is the very strong, perverse effect exerted by privileged special interest groups, which are continually lobbying to maintain their privileges. If you scratch the surface behind any demagogic measure, you will detect which interest group it benefits, often in the shadows. As we have already seen, it is in the interest of politicians to hold on to power in the short term, rather than focus on the long-term common good of society. Democracy must be reformed. Is such a reform possible? I am very skeptical. Hayek devised a model for reform. Please read about it in the 3rd volume of Law, Legislation and Liberty. Hayek believed we could reform the system by electing representatives for a single prolonged term and establishing 2 legislative chambers. One chamber would be devoted to the daily business of government, and another, superior chamber, would be devoted to important laws. That would be a step forward and would deal a blow to demagogy. Still, I am highly skeptical. We professional economists have also done much harm. We have been trained to intervene. In a free economy, a professional economist would be like a philosopher, someone devoted to thinking, but the profession would have no market value. General economics programs teach social engineering, based on the equilibrium model, and prescriptions for intervention, and when these economists graduate, the only job opportunities they have consist of taking public exams for the civil service, and being specialists in intervention, advising privileged special interest groups, or becoming university professors. A university professor who teaches the view of economics I have presented here, based on entrepreneurship and dynamic market processes, is one of a rare breed. I have always described myself as a 5th columnist, a sort of virus introduced into the system to destroy it. For the most part, the university system is state-owned. Do you think it offers incentives to teach about dismantling the state? Other theorists, philosophers, jurists and politicians are completely unaware of how market processes operate, and all the incentives invariably lead them to request more intervention. Imagine a problem in any area, for instance, the judicial system. When people complain that the judicial system does not work, that rulings take a long time to obtain and are contradictory, that judges are inconsistent and so on, do you think anybody replies, "That is due to the tangled web of legislation, intervention and chaos. We need to increase legal certainty and reduce the number of laws. We need few laws within a framework of liberty." Does anybody say that? Nobody does. When people discuss the crisis of the judicial system, what do they call for? More judges, more courts, a larger budget, And do you think that more judges, more courts, and a larger budget are the answer to the problem of the judicial system? They will make the conflict even worse. We have looked at the difficulties today, and we understand what is behind them. Contrary to what the naive classical liberals of the 19th century thought, common sense does not necessarily prevail. In the long run, the correct theories do prevail, without a doubt. The truth wins out. It is just that the long run may be very long. What can we do? Well, we can, and we have a personal responsibility to, advance sound economic theory. This has been the first year you have come into contact with these ideas. We have the readings. There is more literature on the subject. We must study. And in every context, discussion, and meeting with friends, let us take the lead. We will always be swimming against the tide, but we will attract people. Word gets around quickly. You know, this man or this woman has attractive ideas that go against the current. We will convince others. That is our mission. That is our obligation. It is also important to train good economists, and our master's program in Austrian economics is in its 10th year. Publish books, direct doctoral theses, contribute to scientific journals, etc. We must also educate the theorists of other fields in sound economic theory. I am talking about jurists, philosophers, sociologists, and students. We must influence public opinion through books, lectures, and newspaper articles, and we must try to reform democracy. We must secure the support of politicians. Poor politicians. I feel sorry for them. Politicians act as if they were always looking in the rear-view mirror, a posteriori, concerned about the polls. This does not mean they have no leeway to act. If we can get a free market politician with clear ideas into office, perhaps he or she will do less damage. I wrote an article titled El economista liberal y la política, the free market economist and politics, and there I explain what can be done within politicians' extremely limited capacity for action.